So I am very happy to introduce our special guest, Alison Gaylin. Alison won the Edgar Award for her Hudson Valley set novel, If I Die Tonight, which has been optioned by Sony for development as a TV series. Very exciting. A Seamus winner as well. Alison has been published in the US, the UK, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Japan, Germany, Romania, and Denmark. And she has been nominated for numerous awards, including the Macavity, Anthony, ITW Thriller, and Strand Book Award. Her short story, Where I Belong, has been chosen for inclusion in the 2021 Best American Mystery and Suspense, out in October this year, from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. And her 12th book, The Collective, will be out from William Morrow in November 2021. Take it away, Alison.
Thank you. Sorry to jump in so early. I'm just so excited about character, right?
That's fine. That's fine.
Thank you, Carol. As I was mentioning earlier, character is my favorite thing to talk about. I've taught writing suspense and mystery in several places. And to me, the most important tool that you have, your main purpose in writing a mystery is telling a story, of course, but your main tool and your most important tool is character. And that's true, of course, whether you're writing a series or a standalone, and I've written both. Just out of curiosity, if I could see some reaction here, how many of you are either interested in or are writing series books? Okay, series and great. Yeah, so there's quite a few. And how many of you are interested in or are writing standalones? Wow, a lot of series. Some standalones, both. Yeah, I've written both. I feel like I'm a bad example and a pretty good example of writing series books, because my first series that came out was my very first book was called Hide Your Eyes, and it was purchased in 2005, and that was a time when everybody was writing series. That's just which I didn't know. I was completely clueless about everything, but I sold this book that I had written as a standalone, and the publisher, which was NAL, which was a division of Penguin, the editor said, so what other books do you have other books in this series? And I said, oh, of course I do. I have a whole file full of series ideas. Well, I had written a book featuring a character whose last name is spelled Leiffer. That can be pronounced 3 different ways: Leifer, Lifer, Leifer. That's not a good series character name, first of all. Secondly, she's a preschool teacher, off-Broadway box office worker. She has 2 jobs, neither of which are very conducive to crime solving, although that's not a problem. But she also was a rather passive character who things sort of happened to. That's fine for a series, a standalone. But then when it came writing my next book, I just took the events from the first book and how they affected her in the second book, and that was 2 books. I kind of learned my lesson. Then I wrote a couple of standalones, and then I learned my lesson for my actual series that I planned to be a series. I gave my character the name Brenna Spector, which can only be pronounced one way. I made her a professional crime solver, a private investigator. So there you go, crime's going to come into her life. And I spent a lot of time thinking about what type of character could carry a whole series, what type of secret she could have, what type of things could be holding her back and driving her in terms of being a crime solver. When you're writing a series character, you need to write a character that's sort of built to last. And who makes sense in terms of the milieu of solving crimes. That's not to say you can't write a great cozy series about, somebody who works in a flower shop, but the character traits have to be there. They have to be inquisitive. They have to notice things. They have to be curious. They have to be active. They have to be the type of person that would maybe stick their nose in places where they shouldn't belong. You really have to think about what character is going to drive your story. And that is true of series and of standalone, both. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think before I was introduced, our main purpose in writing crime fiction is telling a story. And all of the things from pacing to action to setting to dialogue, those are all tools in telling your story. But to me, the very most important tool, the engine of your car, the driving element, is character. You need to have a person who is capable of either making the mistakes that get them into the bad situation, of having the secret that they need to keep more than anything that will make things go terribly wrong, the inquisitiveness in a cozy series or in an investigative series or in a straight up mystery that will drive them to want to solve the crime. Those character traits have to be there, or else you're imposing plot on a character. It should be the other way around. Plot should come out of the character. A really good example, I think, of this is a book that I just recently reread for the book I'm working on now. And the book that I reread is Rosemary's Baby. So basically the thing is, you can have any plot in the world, and if you have the right character, you can make it plausible. So in case you don't know, Rosemary's Baby is about a very nice young woman who lives in buys a New York lovely city apartment, and is somehow duped by her husband and her elderly neighbors into birthing the Antichrist. So that, in and of itself, that doesn't sound like a very plausible plot. But you take a character like Rosemary who loves and trusts her husband more than anything. Rosemary who desperately wants to be a mother. Rosemary who is a fallen Catholic. And the plot makes sense. This is a person who might get involved in this situation. Rosemary, who is very trusting, and then, discovers it all too late. But more than anything, she wants to be a mother, and this drives her. So if it was a different character, the plot would feel implausible. If it's a character like Rosemary, the plot feels organic and plausible, and you're ready to believe in it, and you're ready to go along for the ride with this character, which I think is pretty remarkable considering this book is less than 200 pages. And a really out there idea. It works if you have the right character. So your character drives your plot and your action, and whatever is sort of holding them back might drive that plot and action as well. They have to have secrets, and so to me, the most important thing, whether you're writing a series or standalone, before you put pen to page, is to get to know your character. Every character, every person has things that they haven't necessarily told anybody. If you're writing a series, that doesn't have to be told in the first book. That can come out in the second book, the third book. It can never come out, but it just can inform your character the way you kind of further that action. If you're writing a standalone, odds are it's probably going to come out in that book. But things, secrets, ideas, things that are buried deep within them, anything that makes a character more complicated and interesting will make the book more interesting and will make your plot more plausible. So get to know your character. To that end, I have a little assignment for you. And this always sort of helps me when I start to write a book. I would like you to, I'm hoping that you all have pens and paper. Do you have pens and paper, please? Okay, hopefully you do. Anyway, Okay, great. So what I'd like you to do is write a journal entry from the point of view of your character. And the first sentence of that entry is, I've never told this to anyone. Just put the pen to paper. Don't, if you're using a laptop, don't pick your fingers up. Don't take your pen up. I'm going to give you guys 3 minutes, and then hopefully we'll get some people to read. So I've never told this to anyone, and we're going to start now. Pay no attention to the dog. One more minute. Okay. And just if everybody could just write their last sentence. All right, great. And if I could see a few hands, if you could raise your hands, at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you will see where it says reactions. And if you tap on that and raise your hands, great, okay. So I'm going to randomly choose 3 volunteers, and let's go with Barb Goffman first. And if Kim, you could unmute.
Barb has control now to unmute, so she is.
Okay, great.
So I should just start?
Absolutely. If you want to show me yourself, do that too, but either way.
Oh, I don't know if my video's not up.
Okay.
I'm not wearing any makeup, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Oh, it says it won't start the
Fine.
video. Apparently I'm muted on your end video-wise. Oh, okay, here we go.
okay, great.
Oh, here I am. Oh,
Oh,
God.
great.
Sit, sorry.
Barb,
Okay.
yeah, either way, you don't, yeah, that's
Okay.
great.
So I've never told anyone this before, but I'm a peeping Tom. I don't sneak up to people's windows or climb trees and use binoculars. My peeping is all electronic. If I get your address, I will look up your house online. I will check it out from all angles. I will see what I can see, even looking in the windows if that's possible, though usually it's not. It's just my way of getting to know you better, but I don't tell most people this because I know they'll find it creepy.
Okay, that's great. That's a great character. And it definitely, that's somebody that would drive your plot, that desire, that's a desire that you wouldn't tell anybody about. And that's a desire you would want to hide and protect. And that's a pure, an absolutely plot driving desire. It was excellent. So I would read a book involved, with a character like this. This is a character that, might get into trouble because of this compulsion and desire, and might see something that they don't necessarily, that they probably shouldn't be seeing if they want to stay safe. And then would they be able to tell people about it? It's a character like that, can create a plot. A plot can spring from a character like that is organic, because this sort of, it's a strength and a weakness, and it drives the action. So that's great. It's really important to let, sometimes when you write these things, you discover a secret that your characters never had. Other times it could be the main source of your story. That to me sounds like it should be the main source of the actual story. So great.
Alison, we have 3 other people, Lori, Barbara, and Kate. So if you want to choose someone randomly.
Okay, how about Barbara?
Okay, hang on. I will ask her to unmute.
Hi. I've never told this to anyone, but a violin worth $500,000 is hidden in the coat closet behind Lou's hats. It's a long story, but I helped steal it. I really, really wish I hadn't, and Lou doesn't know.
Oh, that's great. That's great. It's an actual physical secret, which is wonderful. The fact that this character helped steal it is something that they would want to hide. How much would they want to protect the fact that they stole this? I just love the idea of a violin that's worth that much money. That's just fabulous. And I kind of covet a violin like that. And it's fascinating. It's definitely something that that could drive a plot. Absolutely. To what lengths would that person go to make sure that nobody found out about it? What would happen if Lou did find out? What are the stakes? These are all things that you can kind of think about, and it's just something that you can keep in mind when you're writing this character. That's there. So yeah. Really terrific. Let's go with the other 2. Let's go with Kate.
Okay, hang on.
Okay.
Kate, you can unmute, and you can also start your video if you feel like it.
Oh, yeah. Yes, thank you. Okay. Well, this is quite different from those 2 samples, but here goes. I've never told this to anyone. When I was a child, more like 13, the doctor gave me an unnecessary exam at the behest. Yes, that is the word I heard at the reception desk, at the behest of Mrs. Bolt. I supposedly had swollen glands. The examination required me to undress to my underpants, lay down on the exam table, and be studied like a specimen under a glaring rectangular light.
Ooh. Oh, that's wonderful and creepy and great. And
thank you.
Yeah, and that's really something that would change a character, that would change a person, that would make that character into a different type of a person than they were before that happened. And the fact that, there's a character who might tell this to everybody, but this obviously she feels tremendous shame over it. So what type of character feels that shame? What would they do to protect that aspect of themselves? Are they the type of person who will never let this happen again as a result? Are they angry throughout their life? What does that anger make them do? You see? So when a character has a deep, dark secret like that, which is a lot of times what this assignment brings on, it can spur them into doing all sorts of wrong things in order to protect that secret, or becoming a different type of a person than than they were before that happened. So it informs your character and it changes them. It's not even necessarily like, if this is a series character, for instance, this could come out in the 3rd book. you would just wonder why this character was always so guarded, you know?
Mhm.
It could even be something, even if you're writing a standalone, maybe it's just something you know in creating your character, but it's also something that would probably come out, you know? So
Yes.
so I think that, you know, when these sort of revelations come to you when writing this, it just helps in terms of understanding how they would react in a different situation. You know, if this
Mhm.
person is cornered by a man at a bar, she might not laugh it off. She might act differently than somebody who didn't have that experience,
That's
you know,
right.
would act.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, so this is, it helps you to just kind of get under the skin more. And the more you get under the skin of your characters, the more compelling they're going to be and the easier it's going to be to tell your story with these
Yes.
characters.
Thank you.
Now, did we have, I'm sorry, Kim, did we have one more?
Lori, we had one more who had volunteered. Let me-
Oh, excellent. I would love to hear it.
Hi. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
I've never told this to anyone, but I was born into a devil worshiping cult.
Ooh,
I was able to escape in my late 20s when I discovered that not everyone believed in such things. My upbringing taught me a lot of things about how people hide things, you know, the false faces people wear. And I can honestly say, I know evil.
fantastic. That's great. I love that. I would read this book. I am fascinated by cults of all kinds, particularly devil worshiping ones.
I
I just got through talking about Rosemary's Baby, you know.
Oh,
Um,
love it.
So yeah, I mean, this character is going to react differently if put in a dangerous situation than another character would. You know, she might be, things might be almost sort of normal to her that would be chilling and horrible to other people. You know, how does that affect the way she moves through life? How does that affect the way, you know, say she comes in contact with a killer? You know, say she is a killer. So how does that make her respond? And is there anything that would trigger her if she escaped from this devil worshiping cult? Is there anything somebody might say that might trigger her into doing something terrible? This is it could be a strength, it could be a weakness, and you know, I know evil. You know, that's true. So that's something that, you know, could really spur you on or spur the reader on into wanting to travel with this character more.
Well, I also find that just in my own fascination with cults and um, extreme beliefs, that when people are raised a certain way, even when they later eschew their own upbringing and either become enlightened or change religions or become atheists or leave cults, they still can react with the same sort of thought processes that were inculcated into them at an early age. And so I see that this particular character, this not only is a strength that she can identify when people are sort of wearing those false faces, but that she too then it can be her weakness, because she too then can react as though she were right back in that cult at the
Right,
drop of a
absolutely.
pin.
Let me ask you one question. What is your character's name?
Oh, I just made this up when you had the exercise, so I don't really have a
Okay,
name or
great.
anything else.
So this is, I mean, it kind of leads me into like this one little sort of side trip I wanted to take or talk to you guys about, which is naming your characters. You know, this, I've changed my characters' names several times when I've written something, but especially for somebody born into a devil worshiping cult, I'm very curious to know what they would be named, because I feel that the names of characters tell you more about their relationship with their parents and who their parents were rather than them themselves, unless they have a changed name.
Well, I just thought of a name. I do very much believe in naming characters something that is redolent of, yeah, something that sounds like something that would give you an idea of who that person is or who they could be or who they want to be.
Yes.
And I just thought of Lucy, because Luce means light. So she is now in the light, but Lucy also means Lucifer. So it was
Lucifer,
kind of go
exactly.
both ways.
Exactly. Her full name could be Luciferia.
Oh yeah.
She goes by
Yeah.
Lucy. But or she could have chosen her name. But the interesting thing about names are they're the names our parents give us, right? So
Oh,
if you
yeah.
have a character and say your character's name is Moonbeam, right? They didn't give themselves that name. That tells you who their parents are. You know, my parents named me Moonbeam. Moonbeam could be the most annoyed person on the planet and very cynical and very dark, but her name is friggin' Moonbeam because that's what her parents gave her, you know. Whether you keep your parents' name, whether you have your character keep that name, or whether they have a changed name is a different thing altogether. But I find it very helpful and interesting to me, and it helps. It starts sort of juggling my mind to think about the character's background and how they were raised once I come up with a name. So if somebody's named Jane or Allison, it's you know, they grew up a different way than Moonbeam did, or Luciferia, or whatever. So, you know, think about that. It's naming your characters is really important. Sometimes when you reached a writer's block, when you're writing something, this happens to me all the time. I realize it's because I've given my character the wrong name. I've got to change the name. And then when I do, I'm able to just sort of go forward with it, you know. Okay. So actually, the pronunciation, somebody asked me about the pronunciation, Samantha, Leifer, Lifer. I feel like when you're writing a series character, you don't want to have people, you want the name to stick in people's heads. You want Philip Marlowe. His name's not Philip Malavalurch, you know. You want somebody that people can remember, and a name that somehow kind of tells you who that character is, because ideally, you know, you could easily be with this character through 20, 30 books, and on the cover of the book it's going to say a Samantha Lifer book, you know. It's easier when it says a Brenna Spector mystery. People can remember that, they can stick in their minds. And also if you only are able to sort of pronounce things one way, and if it's somewhat memorable, you know, it doesn't have to be a simple name. Like Dortmunder is one of the best character names I've ever heard. I love it. But if it can stick in people's minds, that character sort of becomes a friend. It's a person that, you know, is with them. And so if this is your friend, you should know how to pronounce your friend's name properly. So it'll help you out if you're able to come up with a name that's easy to pronounce and remember, and, you know, looks good on the page and looks good on the cover of a book. So, you know, it just helps in terms of familiarity. So, and also, when you do audiobooks, the audio person will be grateful to you if they're able to pronounce your character's name properly. So that's another one. So getting to know your character, it's very important, from the name to the background to the secrets. You know, everybody tells you when you're writing that you should have a good elevator pitch for a plot. That you should be able to describe your plot in as few words as possible, which is true. God knows I can't most of the time, but I wish I could. But the opposite holds true for characters. Your character should be described in as many different conflicting terms as possible. They can be shy, but they can be brave. They can be, you know, they can be smart about some things and naive about others. The more, just like a real person, the more adjectives you can use to describe a character, the more richness and depth and conflict there is within that character, and so the more compelling they are. I know there's a lot of talk about creating likable characters, you know, which is, to me, that's sort of a misnomer. You want to create compelling characters, but to be honest, if somebody were to ask me what's the trait I would find the least likable in a character, it would be um, if they were flawless, if they were perfect. That makes me hate a character. That makes me close a book and throw it away. I want somebody like me. I want somebody that has some flaws. A character that is absolutely perfect and moves through life perfectly is normally not a good character for crime fiction anyway, because, you know, they'll never either break the law or become you know, in danger because of it, because they're perfect. So I think a character that has inner conflict and flaws is what makes them more compelling, what makes them more readable and likable. So in other words, you know, the most like a real person you can make a character, the better, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's true. Nancy Drew is a perfect character. To be quite honest with you, was not a huge Nancy Drew fan growing up. The plots are great, but I liked her friend, and I'm trying to remember what her name was. Joe. Did you have a friend named Joe? Nancy Drew. Yeah, Trixie Belden was a much better character. That's true. George, yes, I liked George. I didn't. Nancy was just too perfect. So, anyways, and Beth, yeah. So a book where characters are more complicated can drive the book more. That leads to another exercise that I was going to give you, and I want you to try and write down 3 very positive qualities. And these qualities should not be like loyalty or kindness or whatever. It should be a good husband, loves animals, something really specific like that. Okay, you know, is concerned about the environment, is caring for their elderly mother, you know, something that's a good quality about a person, but nice and specific like that. Because this is leading to my next point, which is also if somebody does bad things in a book, there should be noble qualities within them. If you're writing a villain, it will make them scarier. If you're writing an anti-hero, it will make them more human and more compelling. So write down those qualities, three qualities. Now, if you could just like circle one of those qualities, pick any one. Now, in 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, you're going to write a scene in which someone is disposing of a body, but this quality is going to come out in the scene, either through their internal monologue, the way they relate to something, a memory or whatever, but it's a scene where they're disposing of a body that shows us this quality about them. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, can I see it? Everybody okay with that? No, say again. Okay, so you've written down a few qualities, hopefully, right? Okay, I want you to write a scene where someone is disposing of a body where one of those qualities is displayed. So in other words, they're disposing of a body and you see through the scene that they love dogs and are very kind to dogs, something like that. Okay, so we're going to start hopefully right now. One more minute. About 30 seconds. Okay, so everybody write your last sentence. Great, and would anybody like to read? Can we get a show of hands? Okay. All right, terrific. Great, okay. I see three people. Aubrey, Rachel, and Edith. Let's go with Aubrey first.
Okay, give me a second. I will get them to unmute.
Thank you.
So we will get this going. So Aubrey, go ahead. And if you want to put on video, you don't have to.
Yeah, either way is fine. I'm not forcing everybody to let me into their homes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The body thudded down the stairs, head smacking each step with a wet thwack. The baby on my back barely whimpered. The snuffing had been quick, merciful, once I knew she was a mother, but not for her sake, for the sweet baby's. Still too young to form memories, but I didn't want any question to whether this child would grow up with terror in her heart.
See, that's great. That's great. That's
Creepy, but
scary and creepy. And does it not make that character scary and creepier that he was so that he or she, that was sexist of me to say he, was so concerned about the baby? You know, that's the thing. That's like, that reminds me of James Gumb in Silence of the Lambs, being so sweet to that little dog. It's so good when you're writing an evil character to give them that bit of kindness, you know. Or this could also be, you know, a hitman or a hit woman who has to do this for a living and is sort of an anti-hero but wants to save the child. Either way, it makes for a more complex character. I think it's terrific, and I would read that book. So it's great. Let's go with Rachel next.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. As he dragged the bag along, he thought, how did I get here? I had such a bright future ahead. A fiance, plans to raise a family, and lofty career aspirations. What will my friends say if they find out? As he rounded the corner, he froze in place and picked up a very light rustling sound. A cockroach the size of an iPhone crawled out, and he instinctively squashed it. A smile graced his face, knowing Lynn would be grateful. Because I need my husband to kill all the bugs. I'm not killing the bugs.
He's a good husband.
Yeah.
He's a good husband. Yeah, that's great. You know, it's interesting. There's a character in in the Harlan Coben book, Tell No One, who is a killer. His name is Larry Gandol, and he needs to get home to take his medication on time, because his wife will get really mad at him if he doesn't take his medication on time. And it just adds so much to the fact that he's just, you know, has to come home after this murder to do this, you know. I think making a killer a good wife or husband is a great character trait. And really good writing too, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. And let's see, I think we had one more.
Yeah, Edith.
Great.
Good.
Yeah. Edith.
Unmuted. There we go.
Okay, yay.
I'm trying to start my video. Oh, did I? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We got it.
Oh, but okay. I'm not ready. I'm ready for the cocktail party in an hour, but not yet.
So much.
All righty. Let's see. This has been really fun. Crap, Hal muttered. He didn't have time to dig the grave deep enough. Hal didn't care if the frost heaved it next January. But what if Preston started digging? His big-ass Norwegian forest cat could smell flesh like no cat he'd ever owned. And Hal couldn't keep Mr. P indoors, no way. Hal couldn't bear it if Preston unearthed the corpse in the back corner of the yard. What would happen to Hal's fur baby when he went away for life?
Okay, all right. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love anything with a cat in it, first of all, but also a killer who uses the term fur baby that's gold right there. It's so good. And there's a sweetness to it. The complexity of a character, it's, just giving them that little thing. He's no longer a run-of-the-mill killer. He's got something else going on. He's got something he cares about. It just adds to it so much, and it gives it so much depth. I think that was terrific. I think it was you, Edith. You asked a question earlier about characters being too nice. Did you say that, or was it somebody else?
I said I have trouble sometimes. My protagonists kind of automatically come out too nice, and I have to give them more problems.
Yeah, but you know what though? I think being nice can be a flaw. I think that could be a character aspect that gets them into trouble because they could be taken advantage of, if you write it. I mean, I think that was why, again, coming back to Rosemary's Baby, that's why she got in that situation. She was too nice. She trusted her husband too much. She trusted her neighbors too much, even though she had her suspicion. She just thought, no, I should be nice. I think being too nice could be a very, very compelling thing that gets somebody into trouble. It's just, there's a big difference between being nice and being perfect. Being perfect, no. Right. But a character who's too nice can be very, very interesting and very compelling. And I don't think you should to try and limit that. I think that could be a really good character trait, and being too nice and paying for being too nice is a really fascinating way to tell a story. So I wouldn't, if you want to write a character that's overly nice to people, I wouldn't hold yourself back from it. Really,
they come out that way. So this little thing was actually really totally modeled on the man I live with downstairs. So
I hope he's not disposing of bodies.
If he ever had to dispose of a body and Preston was still but Alison, I wanted to say, in the Boston Globe a few days ago, Sunday, I think, Harlan Coben said, "You are the next big thing."
Oh, well, I hope he's right. That's really.
Did you see that?
I didn't even know that, but somebody posted it on my page, actually.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, that's awfully nice."
He said, "Alison Gaylin's coming up."
Let's hope. Let's all cross our fingers. It's good to have people in high places saying nice things about you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. But yeah, it's interesting. So when so you've got your character now, you've got this depth to your character, you've got secrets to your character, you've got things that will compel them to maybe be doing bad things or being involved in unsavory or frightening situations. You have all these things in your character that you're learning and getting to know, and you're getting ready to put pen to paper. And the thing that is very important at this point is that you find the right narrative voice. And that's a lot of times easier said than done, because a lot of it is intuitive, but this is how you're communicating with your reader. This is how you're driving your plot forward, and you've chosen your point of view, but you need to illustrate that point of view with the most compelling narrative voice you can find. Somebody had said about Sue Grafton once that you could pick up any page of any, turn pick up any Sue Grafton book and turn to any page and read a page of a Kinsey Malone book, and you'll know that Sue Grafton wrote that book, and you'll know that it's Kinsey Malone because the voice is so strong. And that's sort of what you want to strive for, whether you're writing a series or a standalone, particularly a series, because that's what's going to want to make people read more books, not just a good plot, but a compelling voice that feels like a friend or feels like just somebody you want to eavesdrop on. That, like, again, it doesn't have to be a friend, but just something that's compelling in that way. So in choosing your voice, of course, you're going to want to choose either first person or close third, or I have an example here to read also that's the second person, but that's only the first chapter of a book. But I tend to think that for crime fiction, an omniscient voice can kind of work against you, because you ideally want to get under the skin of your character and make your reader feel things that the character might feel. It's got to be a real visceral experience for the reader, like feel like they're involved in the book and get scared and everything. And if you're viewing it from up here and you're omniscient, it's not as easy to do that. It's much easier if you're writing in the first person or a close third. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you know what a close third is, but just to reiterate it, it's like a first person, only it's third person. So it has a rhythm to it, as if a person is speaking to you, as if you're reading everything as I, but it's told in the third person. It tells you everything about who the character is, but again, it's third person. I have a really good example of a close third in this book, which unfortunately my copy lost its cover, but it is The Most Dangerous Thing, and it's a book by Laura Littman. And she does really, really interesting things of person in this book. She even has chapters written from the first person plural. We did this, we did that, and it works. But the very first chapter is written from the point of view of a really troubled guy who's really drunk, and you almost feel drunk when you're reading it, but it's a close third. It's right under that person's skin. So I'm just going to read a little of it to you. They throw him out when he falls off the bar stool. Although it wasn't a fall exactly, he only stumbled a bit coming back from the bathroom and lurched against the bar, yet they said he had to leave because he was drunk. He finds that hilarious. He's too drunk to be in a bar. He makes a joke about a fall from grace. At least he thinks he does. Maybe the joke was one of those things that stays in his head for his personal amusement. For a long time, for fucking forever, Gordon's mind has been split by a thick, dark line, a line that divides and defines his life as well. What stays in, what is allowed out. But when he drinks, the line gets a little fuzzy, which might be why he drinks. Drinks. No drink. He's done. Again. One night, one slip. He didn't even enjoy it that much. You driving? The bartender asks, piloting him to the door, his arm firm yet kind around Gordon's waist. No, I live nearby, he says. One lie, one truth. He does live in the area, but not so near that he hasn't driven here in his father's old Buick. Good old shitty bang bang, they called it. Well, not this Buick, but the Buick before, or the Buick before that. The old man always drove Buicks, and they were always crap cars, but he kept buying them. That was Timothy Halloran Sr., loyal to the end, even to the crap of the crap of the crap. Okay, so that's an example of close third. I read from The Most Dangerous Thing by Laura Littman, and it came from a few books back. I love all of her books, but that book has some of the best close third I think I've ever read, which is just the rhythm of it sounds drunk. You know the guy before you even know his name. You know his father's name. Obviously, his father is an important person to him. You know that about him on the second page of the book. He seems to love his father, but is critical of his father. You know he's troubled. You know he was sober until tonight. You know all this stuff about him, all this information, but it's shown rather than told. And it's a third person that feels like a first person, that feels like you're inside somebody's head. So it's a really, really good narrative voice. I would really definitely suggest that book, but close third is good, particularly if you're writing, say a lot of times, you could do a close third in a series, but it's worked well for standalones because you could switch points of view. I know sometimes people go between a first and a close third, but to me, I personally find it easier to go between various close thirds. So it doesn't look like you're kind of favoring one character over another, or you're suddenly outside, I feel like if you're in the close third, you can go from head to head to head, and you can sort of increase suspense that way. You can end a chapter from one character's point of view and leave them hanging about what that character is going to do next, and then go close third on another character. So that's one way to sort of build suspense and with pacing is to do a close third. Another, another way to tell a story, which is in my book coming up, I did it for the first time in a long time, is first person. And it can be kind of claustrophobic. It can be incredibly exciting, and it allows you to easily get into a person's head and see the world through their eyes. The book I'm going to read from is Queen Pin by Megan Abbott. And it's a book of hers that came out several years ago. Megan Abbott writes a lot of great books, and most of her more recent books have been set in the present day. This book is not set in the present day, but it actually, it's just, this is a really good first person. So I'm just going to read from that. I want the legs. That was the first thing that came into my head. The legs were the legs of a 20-year-old Vegas showgirl, 100 feet long with just enough curve and give and promise. Sure, there was no hiding the slightly worn hands or the beginning tugs of skin framing the bones in her face, but the legs, they lasted, I tell you, they endured. 2 decades her junior, my skinny matchsticks were no comparison. In the casino, she could pass for 30. The low lighting, her glossy auburn hair, legs swinging, tapping the bottom rim of the tall better stools. At the track, though, she looked her age, even swathed in oversized sunglasses, a wide-brimmed hat, bright gloves. She couldn't outflank the merciless sunshine, the glare off the grandstand. Not that it mattered. She was legend. I was never sure what she saw in me. You look like you knew a thing or two, she told me later, but we're ready to learn a lot more. It was a soft sell, a long sell. I never knew what she had in mind until I already had such a taste I thought my tongue would never stop buzzing. Meanwhile, she got me in. She got me jobs. She got me fat stacks of cash too thick to wedge down my cleavage. She got me in with the hard boys, the fast money, and I couldn't get enough. I wanted more. Give me more. So that's great, right? First person tells you not only about the person, but about the time period in which it's set, about this person's priorities, about what she sees in the main character, the Queen Pin, not the main character, but the title character. You know every inch of this character, not just even from the things she says, but from the poetry, the rhythm, and the pacing of the way she says them. All of our thoughts have a rhythm. If you can achieve that in your narrative voice, you've got them hooked. So I think this is a great example of the first person, an interesting example of the first person. It can be a lot simpler in your storytelling. It doesn't have to be as poetic. It certainly doesn't have to be of a certain time period. It can be in the present, but the first person is a great way to get your reader to identify with your character. The minus side of it is that character, it better be compelling because you're staying in that head for a whole book, if not a series of books. So please know that character inside and out and make them an interesting one if you're going to be writing something from the first person. The third example I wanted to tell you, and it's a little bit more for fun because books are rarely written entirely from this point of view, is the second person, but boy, is this good. This is The Torment of Others by Val McDermid. It's one of the Tony Hill novels that she writes. She's a British author. There was a series that was on BBC based of her books with wonderful Robson Green in it. And I'm trying to remember the name, but anyway, she writes these Tony Hill books that are wonderful. And they're very, 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 very scary. So second person is very interesting way to get into the mind of a character, even if it's just as an exercise. But I'm just going to read this to you. Just because you hear voices, it doesn't mean you're mad. You don't have to be well smart to know that. And even though you did all that stuff that made the jury look sick to their stomachs, at least you're clever enough to know that doesn't make you a nutter. All sorts of people have other voices in their heads. Everybody knows that. Like on the telly, even though you can believe it when you're watching it, everybody knows it's not real. And somebody's got to have dreamed it up in the first place without them ending up where you have. Stands to reason. So you're not worried. Well, not very worried. Okay, they said you were insane. The judge said your name, Derek Tyler, and he tagged you with the mad label. But even though he's supposed to be a smart bastard, that judge didn't know he was following the plan. The way to avoid the life sentence that they always hand down when somebody does what you did, if you make them believe you were off your head when you did it, that it isn't you that did the crime, it's the madness in you. And if you're mad, not bad, it stands to reason you can be cured, which is why they lock you up in the nut house instead of the Nick. That way the doctors can poke around in your head and have a crack at fixing what's broke. Of course, if nothing's broke in the first place, the best thing you can do is keep your mouth zipped, not let on that you're as sane as them. Then, when the time is right, you can start talking. Make it look like they've somehow worked their magic and turned you into somebody they can let out on the street again. It sounded really easy when the voice explained it. You're pretty sure you got it right because the voice went over it so many times you can replay the whole spiel just by closing your eyes and mouthing the words. I am the voice. I am your voice. Whatever I tell you to do is for the best. I am your voice. This is the plan. Listen very carefully. That's the trigger. That's all it takes. The intro that makes the whole tape play in your head. The message is still there and planted deep inside your brain, and it still makes sense, or at least you think it does. Only it's been a long time now. It's not easy staying on the wrong side of silence day after day, week after week, month after month, but you're pretty proud of the way you've hung on to it because there's all the other stuff interfering with the voice. Therapy sessions where you have to blank what the real nutters are talking on about. Counseling sessions where the doctors try and trick you into words, not to mention the screaming and shouting when somebody goes off on one. Then there's all the background noise of the day room, the TV and the music rumbling around your head like interference. All you have to fight back with is the voice and the promise that the word will come when the time is right. And then you'll be back out there doing what you've discovered you do best, killing women. So that is this book, The Torment of Others by Val McDermid. Second person, a really, really interesting way to tell a story. Really great way to get inside the mind of a character. If you're stuck, I have found before that when I've been stuck writing characters, I've written a scene in the second person. Okay, one quick question. The whole book is not in that voice. No, it actually switches points of view. So it's just the characters, just the killer talks from the second person. Yeah, but thank you for the question. So second person can enable you to maybe say things that are a little difficult to tell in the first or third person. It's a good way to sort of do an exercise. So in other words, so if you want to, kind of switch over and write in that second person, you'll kind of find yourself, it's a little bit freeing. So to that end, I wanted to give you another exercise. In this exercise, what you want to do, let me give a brief introduction to this as best I can. When you're writing anything, obviously, you've probably all heard this before, you want to use all five senses. You want to use sight and sound and smell You want to do that as much as you can so the person reading it can feel things as much as they can, because if you're just describing things visually, they're going to feel removed and you're not going to be able to scare them as much. And that's our goal, isn't it? We want to scare them, or at least keep them intrigued, or keep them turning pages, or get them worried. And the more you can get under somebody's skin, a character's skin, the more emotion, the more visceral experience it'll be for the reader. So to that end, I would like you to write a scene from the point of view of somebody who is buried alive, but I'd like you to do it in the second person, you. So describing all the sounds that you might hear, the scent, also, you know, the worries that might be going through your mind, the concerns. Use as many senses as you can to describe the scene. You don't need to really focus on the plot so much, but obviously your character's mind might wander a little bit. So from the point of view of somebody being buried alive, but written in the second person. Does that make sense to everybody? Are we good? Is everybody, can I see, like, does everybody understand? Yes. Okay, good. Okay. So I'm just going to give you a couple minutes for that. And then I see that there's some questions too, which I'll answer, but I would like you to try and do this assignment starting now. Okay, one more minute. Okay. Is everybody finished your last sentence or so? Great. And if I could get a few volunteers. Anybody? Okay, great. Terrific. One more. I've got Kate and Sasha, I see. Okay, great. So if I could hear, yeah, it is a challenging exercise, especially doing things in you. And I'm curious to know, like, how how it was, like whether it made it easier or harder. Kate, could I hear yours, please?
Okay, thank you. And whoops.
Gotcha.
Okay. And it made it easier.
Oh, good. Yeah.
You felt the tumble in, but never expected to hear the dull drag of a plywood cover, of plywood something cover you over. Never imagined the muffled laughter through the thin piece of wood. The woody scent and the moist cold dirt against your cheek as your tumble folded body curled upward like you were listening to an underground blank. I didn't get to finish.
Oh, but that's really good. You got like a lot of sensory stuff in there. It's terrific. And I feel like it flowed really nicely. And I'm wondering if it made you feel a little less, I don't know, self-absorbed or something to write it in the second person,
Very much so. It was very relaxing.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Very relaxing. I was really happy.
Yeah, I've been doing that on a book that I'm working on now. I've been writing, various chapters in the second person, and I found it really pretty freeing. Like it's just, I kind of get sick of saying I all the time, and it just, I might easily just switch it back to I or he or whatever, but in terms of just getting the writing out, it really is quite freeing, right? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Sasha. Great. Yeah. Great.
Hi. Oh,
Hey.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to leave my camera off because I'm not prepared.
Oh, no problem.
You knew what would happen when you agreed to this, but agreeing to be buried alive and actually living through it were two very different things. The audience thought you were thrill seeking for the cash prize and a bit of fame. But the truth was you needed to buy time to find out who told about Kelsey and what it would take to keep them silent.
Oh, I love the introduction of the audience. And now I want to read that. No, that's great. Did you find writing in the second person sort of, did you find it harder or easier than writing in the first or third?
I actually found it harder. I typically write in tight third all the time. And so I found myself writing, she, and I'm like, no, go back and reframe that. And then it's kind of, you're in that person's head and it's kind of weird to describe things outside of that.
Yeah, there's a different flow and a different rhythm to it that's really kind of interesting as a reader to hear. And I don't know, it's almost like you're kind of connecting with me or something. I find that too. I keep when I'm writing and I'm saying you and you and you, a lot of times I'll see myself switching back to he or whatever. But it's an interesting sort of point of view, I think. It's pretty compelling. And compellingly written, Sasha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rachel. Great.
Yeah. Okay. You ever played such a good game of hide and seek that people nearly forgot about you or gave up trying? You can hear their footsteps. You can hear their footsteps and the frustration in their voice. You decided to hide under the dirty laundry where no one goes. And for a few moments, even you forgot this was still a game. And you gave yourself a moment to play your own game of pretend. Yeah, this isn't like that.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So that's a great thing. A lot of times, when you're writing a scene like that, a peril to flash back to childhood, that's where your mind goes, and I like how it sort of started out and writing it in the second person, I felt sort of connected to as a reader. Now, that to me sounded pretty seamless. Was that easy for you to write, Rachel, or was it challenging?
Honestly, I'm really glad that you explained what second person is because it's been a long time since I even remember.
What?
Well, yeah, honestly, I always used to question what it was, but saying you feels really like it makes a lot of sense for the kind of writing that I'm, feeling compelled to do because I want it to be like self-help but masked. I don't want it to come across like that. I want it to be like I'm speaking to you about something. But I want to take myself out of it sometimes. I need to learn how to take myself out of my writing because I do it a lot.
Yeah, I think that it helps to do that, and it sounds the way you wrote it, it's very conversational. It's very connecting. You started with a question, remember when you were, it's a really intriguing way to start something, so yeah, I mean, you might want to really play with it. I don't know about doing an entire book in it. And like I said, the torment of others, as you asked, goes back and forth. Bright Lights, Big City was all in the second person. It drove me nuts, but I think like using it sparingly, or hell, Bright Lights, Big City sold really well. So, either way, it's just an interesting way to approach things. And I just find it a little bit like weirdly, I feel like it takes a little bit of the pressure off in a way, because it is so sort of conversational.
I agree.
You notice this in conversation when people are talking about something, when you ask somebody a really difficult question, or when you see somebody, I notice this in interviews when people are asking, so how did you feel when you were attacked? So if somebody asks someone that question, a lot of times they respond with, well, you just shut down, you get nervous, they respond in the second person, and it's protective in a way, I think. So I feel like in terms of writing and getting difficult scenes out that might feel awkward or nerve-wracking in the first or third, it's a little freeing sometimes to just do it that way in the second. I did notice there were a few questions back there. I didn't want to, somebody said, okay, Aubrey says, I kept wanting to add I as if I was the killer talking to the victim. Yeah, I mean, that's true too. Then it becomes more of an epistolary novel. That's another point of view you can do. Actually, I wrote a book called Never Look Back. That was my book, my most recent book. It came out the year before last, and it alternates between chapters of a young girl in the 70s who becomes part of a murderous duo, and she's writing letters to her future child. So it's epistolary in those chapters. They're letters. They're written as letters. So that's where the person, you're speaking directly to another person, even if that person is an idea in your head. I think it could kind of be fascinating to write a chapter told from the point of view of a killer talking to a victim, directly rather than to the reader. That could be really scary. I've never done it, but I think it could be a cool idea. So I wouldn't shy away from doing that if that's your inclination to do it. So I'm wondering if there are any questions, or I can move on. I don't know whether I missed any in the chat. Were there any?
I didn't notice any that you've missed.
Okay.
If someone did put up a question that missed, just retype it in chat and we'll get to it as soon as we can. So yeah, I don't know if did you address Lori's question about switching back and forth from first to third and alternating chapters, or switching
I saw that question.
protagonist and antagonist?
That's what I was thinking about, was that question. So I've read that in other books, and I don't mind it as a reader. I find it difficult as a writer to do that. I don't know how you feel, Lori. I feel like when I'm writing it, I feel as though the reader would ask me, why are you switching back and forth? Because I've read books, and actually I do kind of think this. I read books where it switches back and forth from, say, a victim's point of view, or the hero's protagonist point of view and the killer's point of view, and the killer's told in the third person. And I feel like that's a way to just not get your hands dirty, reading it. Like, why did you decide to do that? I find myself asking questions like, why did you decide to do that in the third person and that in the first person? Did you not want to get close enough to that character? Why do you want to stay away from that character? Do you want me to stay away? Do you know what I'm saying? I didn't feel it in The Torment of Others, where she shifted back and forth to the second person, because that just felt like a narrative voice to me. But I think if you are going to shift back and forth between the first and third person, it has to be done in such a seamless way that the reader's not questioning why you did it, and that they're not hung up on the device more than the telling of the story. Your goal in writing, of course, is to tell a story in as easy a way possible. And narrative voice is your most important tool towards telling that story. So if the reader ever gets tripped up and thinks, why are they doing that? Why is the writer doing that? If they're thinking about you, just like you're thinking about a decision an actor made when making a movie, that's not what you want to do. You want it to be, you want the author to be out of the action as much as possible. So I hope that answers the question. I feel like it can be done in a seamless way as possible. There is a really good book actually in which that is done, where it didn't bother me at all. And it is called, it's right here in my bookshelf. It's called The Disappearing, and it's by Lori Roy. And she's a great writer, and she's won the Edgar twice, I think. And this actually goes between third and first person. And the first person is the person who may or may not have committed the crime. So I don't want to give any spoilers, but The Disappearing by Lori Roy, and it's hardcover, but this is an advanced copy, is something where that's done really well. And she's such a good writer, and she does it so seamlessly that never once did I think, why is she doing that? So yeah, I see that my manuscript is opposite. The killer is getting switched from third to first because he's creepier that way. I could see that. Interestingly, I am in the third for the two protagonists because they are the romance element, and I think I don't know the female well enough. So that's interesting. So I think you got to know all your characters really well, whether you're in the first or in the third. And a lot of times you're learning about them as you're writing the book. So you want to know as much as you can about them, but odds are they're going to surprise you while you're writing the book anyway. I'm trying to read at the same time. Yeah, James Patterson does switch between the first and third. And see, I'm with him, not that I'm going to criticize a guy who sold 50 gazillion books, but to me, that takes me out of the book when he goes back and forth. I just feel like it has to be done in the right way, in a way where there are other reasons for it, in a way where it kind of is the way you're treating the narrative voice, and it's telling you about something about the character or the rhythm of the way they talk. If you are doing it with the two protagonists because you don't know the female character as well, maybe the female character doesn't know herself as well, and that's why it's in the third person. Like maybe if you come up with reasons like that, then I'll be on board with you. If it has something to do with your character, why you're switching between the first and third person, if that tells the reader more about the character and the way they move through life, then that's great. So yeah, I mean, in a way, I think it could easily work if you're under the skin of the killer and not of the two protagonists, because it could be scary that way. So yeah, yeah, I think Girl on a Train does do that too. Yes, yeah, exactly. So there are books that do it, that do switch back and forth. To me, in my own writing, I've switched back and forth between things like, like I said, like letters or news stories and the third person, or between different third persons. But I've never written a book, and I've written first person, but they're epistolary in Never Look Back. So letters versus the third person, where I'm going into the heads of a bunch of different characters. So I've done that. But you know what? Whatever way is the best way to tell a story, then do it. You can always switch it around. If you read it and it feels awkward to you going from the first to the third, then switch one of them. That is what I was going to get to, which is don't worry so much about your first draft. I completely write the worst, most horrible, awful first drafts of anybody. I feel sorry for my agent and my editor because my first drafts suck. Then the wonderful thing about writing is you can rewrite. So I do an extremely extensive rewrite in which I learn so much more about my characters than I ever knew about them in the first draft. And then, then you have the copy in it too. But if it's easier for you as a writer to get the story out writing in the first person, but then you realize in the second draft, oh, it would be more compelling if I wrote it in the first, or switch back and forth, you can do that. So nothing's written in stone. Just get that story out. Okay, so it looks like we have 10 minutes, and I did want to see if I could answer some questions, if anybody has them. Or I can just keep blabbing.
Type in chat, guys. If you have questions, this is a good time to do it. You've been taking questions already, so you may have been.
Yeah, that's true. I've been jumping the gun. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that, oh, something from my books. Oh, well, I could. I'll show you the cover of my book that's coming up, actually. And it's called The Collective, and it's written in the first person. So to me, yes, okay, so address the issue of backstory when writing a first person lead character. So explain that to me a little bit. Are you talking about doing flashbacks, or like how we would find out about a person's backstory? Is that what you mean? Yeah. So they always say show rather than tell. The last thing you want to do is to have somebody just spew out a whole big information dump about a character, especially early on in the book, because the reader doesn't care about them yet. It's like going on a first date with somebody and having them tell you about all their previous relationships. It's kind of a turnoff. So what you want to do is a character's backstory informs the way they move through the world. It informs the way they interact with people. And then, once you have them interacting with people and moving through the world, when they have a quiet moment, if their backstory is important to the story and important to who they are as a character, it might not be. It's going to come out in their thought process, in their internal monologue. It might come out if they say they had a terrible childhood and then they have a scene with their mother. It's going to come out in that scene. They're not going to spew out everything from their childhood. The reader might have to figure out what happened, but they'll know enough in the way this character responds and reacts to their mother that they weren't raised in a good way by them, that they don't like being in the same room by them. Always show rather than tell. Do that as much as you can. Every aspect of your character's backstory might not come out in your first draft, and that's okay. It will add a richness and depth and confidence to writing your character where you know where they came from. And the only thing that matters is it's just sort of like doing research too. What matters is what is going to get you through that story. How are you going to best tell that story? It's not, you don't have to get the backstory, the character's entire backstory out within the book. If you're writing a series, like I was saying, the character's backstory could come out in the third book, the fourth book, or never. It doesn't matter. It's something for you as a writer to know, and which will add confidence to your writing. Okay, so the tight third or close third, is that the same as third person limited? Yes, it's the same thing. So in other words, it's not, they don't know what other people are thinking any more than if a first person was writing something. They don't know what they look like from the outside unless they're looking in a mirror. They're not thinking about the way they're moving through the world, the way others would see them. They're just moving through the world. So does that make sense?
Diane
Yeah.
Scott earlier in the thing also had a question about a magic number to the number of books in a series for marketability, sales, and engagement.
Oh boy, it could be anything, you know? I mean, you look at like Sue Grafton's series. I mean, I guess the magic number, I wish she was able to get all the way through the alphabet, you know, but you can keep going as long as you like. My series, my Brandon Spector series, was only 3 books. I might come back to it eventually, but what I did was I told us an arching story that went through all 3 books. So there were mysteries in all 3 books. The main character was looking for or always wanted to find her sister who disappeared. And that story arched throughout all 3 books, and there was a resolution in the 3rd book. So it sort of felt like a good thing to at least take a break from it at that point. But in terms of pitching that as a series, I didn't say there were going to be 3 books in the series. I pitched it as a series. And then I wrote the 3 books, and then I told HarperCollins that I wanted to write a standalone, and they were like, sure. So that's what I did. So I'm not sure about what they're looking for. I know there are so many series out there that just have dozens of books and that people can't get enough of them, you know. I know my dad used to be a big reader of series, and there was a series that he read, the Rabbi series, the Monday when the Rabbi got tired, the Tuesday, and he was so upset when the Rabbi went through all the days of the week. so I think any number, if your character's got enough steam that they can pull you through dozens of books, I think a publisher would probably be very happy with that, as would readers. So are there other questions? Okay, there's a lot that happened in her past and that makes her who she is, and that's what I want the reader to understand. So okay, in terms of revealing your backstory in the book, yes. So your backstory, just like your own backstory in life, is going to make you act a certain way in all different types of situations. And if it's an overpowering backstory that you have, then your character is going to act a certain way. The reader's going to be thinking, why are they acting that way? And then it's fine within their internal monologue or within a character or in a conversation with a character who might know that backstory, then it would come up. But I feel like backstory is something that should be slow, like little sprinkles throughout, something that comes out a little bit of it at a time, intriguing the reader more and more as you get to know the character. The more interested in the character you are, the more interested in their backstory you're going to be. So you need to get to know them a little more and more as the book goes along. I hope that makes sense. Oh yes, that's true. He did. He did. About the Rabbi, yes. He did continue. Great. Well, thank you so much, all of you. I think we have 1 more minute left. Yes. Great. And if anybody does have any other questions, you feel free to email me. I'm at Alison Gaylin at verizon.com. If anybody wants to ask questions, I'm not always great at answering emails, but I am around. And my book, The Collective, comes out in November of this year, and it's told in the first person. So great. Thank you so much, all of you, for asking such wonderful questions and for doing such terrific writing.